Picture this. A woman screaming in a cold stone chamber miles away from any castle. No royal physicians. No golden cradle waiting. Just shadows, shame, and a baby whose first breath is labelled a sin. The child's father, a king. But that kid's got no crown coming, no throne, no nothing. Just a life sentence of being called one word. Bastard. Now freeze that image in your mind, because here's the twist that's going to blow your brain wide open. Some of those babies, those so-called mistakes, those illegitimate accidents of royal lust, they didn't just survive. They conquered. They ruled. They changed the entire game. And the legitimate princes with their fancy bloodlines and perfect pedigree. They got crushed, forgotten, erased from history while the bastards took everything. You think the rules matter. You think being born right means you're going to end up on top. Brother, sit down. I'm about to tell you stories that'll shatter everything you thought you knew about power, blood, and destiny. These aren't fairy tales. This is raw history. The kind they don't teach you in school because it's too messy, too scandalous, too brutally honest about how the world actually works. Let's start with the big dog, Ran, the original badass bastard who literally conquered a kingdom and made everyone forget he was ever called illegitimate in the first place. England, year 1028. A duke's having an affair with a tanner's daughter. Not even a noble woman, a tanner's daughter. The girl who works with animal skins, and she gets pregnant. When that baby boy comes out, the whole court's whispering. They call him William the Bastard, not behind his back, to his face. That's his actual nickname. Imagine growing up with that. Every introduction, every formal announcement, here comes William the Bastard. Kids these days complain about their usernames. This dude's legal title was literally Bastard. But here's where it gets wild. His daddy dies when William's just 7 years old. 7. And suddenly this illegitimate kid is Duke of Normandy, the nobles. Oh, they're pissed. They try to kill him multiple times. Assassins in his bedroom. Poison in his food. 3 of his guardians get murdered just for protecting him. This kid's living in a horror movie, except it's real life and there's no script. William doesn't break. He gets hard, cold, strategic. By the time he's a teenager, he's already fighting full-scale battles. And here's the kicker. In 1066, he looks across the channel at England and says, "You know what? I want that. I want..." So he builds an invasion fleet, crosses the English Channel, fights the Battle of Hastings, and kills the English king with an arrow to the eye. Then he takes the crown. Just takes it. The bastard becomes William the Conqueror. Not William the Bastard anymore. The Conqueror. He rewrote his own story with blood and steel, an absolute, ruthless ambition. Every king and queen of England since then, they're his descendants. Every single one. The British royal family you see today, that's a bastard's bloodline. Let that sink in. But William's just the appetizer. Let me tell you about Portugal and a bastard who saved an entire nation from disappearing off the map. Portugal's got a problem in 1383. Their king dies with no legitimate heirs. The throne's supposed to go to the king's daughter, but she's married to the King of Castile, and nobody wants a Spanish dude running Portugal. The whole country's about to get swallowed up. So who do they turn to? John, the king's bastard son. The illegitimate one everyone ignored at family dinners. They literally choose the bastard over the legitimate heir because the bastard loves Portugal more than his own legitimacy. John doesn't just take the throne. He creates a whole new dynasty, the House of Aves. Under his rule, Portugal becomes a maritime superpower. They're exploring Africa, discovering new trade routes, building an empire that stretches across the globe. And it all started because they bet on the bastard instead of the legitimate princess. John didn't just become king. He became the father of Portuguese greatness, the age of discovery. That's his legacy. They still celebrate him today. The legitimate heirs. Nobody even remembers their names. Now let's talk about Don Juan of Austria. This story's darker. Richer. More tragic in ways that'll make your chest tight. Spain, 1547. Holy Roman Emperor Charles V is getting older, and he's got this secret, a son, born to a random woman in Germany. An illegitimate boy he's kept hidden his whole life. When Charles dies, he tells his legitimate son Philip II, "Hey, by the way, you got a half-brother. Take care of him." Philip could have thrown the kid in a dungeon, could have had him quietly killed. Instead, he brings Don Juan to court. Don Juan grows up in the shadow of legitimacy. He's charming, brave, absolutely brilliant at warfare, but he's always the bastard brother. Always second. Always reminded that he'll never wear a crown. So what does he do? He becomes a military legend. In 1571, the Ottoman Empire's naval fleet is terrorizing the Mediterranean. They're unstoppable. They've conquered Constantinople. They're pushing into Europe. The entire Christian world is freaking out. Kid's only 24 years old. Battle of Lepanto happens. Don Juan doesn't just win. He annihilates the Ottoman navy, sinks or captures over 200 ships. It's one of the most decisive naval victories in history. Suddenly the bastard's the hero of all Christendom. Poets write about him, artists paint him, women throw themselves at him. He's more famous than his legitimate brother the king. But here's the cruel twist. Don Juan dies young, at 33, probably poisoned, possibly by people jealous of his fame. He never got to be king, but his legend, that outlived every legitimate royal of his time. Speaking of legends that don't die, let me hit you with James Scott, Duke of Monmouth. This dude's story is pure Shakespearean tragedy mixed with political thriller. England, 1649. King Charles II is in exile, hiding from people who just chopped his father's head off. The whole royal family scattered across Europe, broken, scared. While he's running around trying to survive, Charles meets this gorgeous Welsh woman named Lucy Walter. They have a son, James Scott, another royal bastard, but when Charles finally gets his throne back, he absolutely adores this kid. Gives him titles, land, money, everything except the one thing James really wants. Legitimacy. James grows up handsome, charming, popular and Protestant. That last part's important. Here's the problem. Charles's legitimate brother, James II, is Catholic, and England hates Catholics. Like, really hates them. There were literally laws against Catholics holding office, and people start whispering, "Why don't we make the bastard king instead? At least he's Protestant." Monmouth starts believing it, starts thinking he deserves it. His daddy loves him. The people love him. Why shouldn't he be king? When Charles dies, and Catholic James takes the throne, Monmouth launches a full rebellion. He lands in England with a tiny army of peasants and farmers, expecting the whole country to rise up for him. They don't. Professional soldiers crush his ragtag army at the Battle of Sedgemoor. Monmouth gets captured, brought before his uncle, and here's where it gets heartbreaking. Monmouth begs. Man, this proud, beautiful bastard who thought he could be king literally grovels on his knees, crying, begging for mercy. His uncle shows none. They drag him to the executioner. And get this, the executioner's so nervous he botches the job. Takes 5 swings of the axe to get Monmouth's head off. 5 swings. The crowd screaming in horror. Blood everywhere. It's one of the most brutal executions in English history. The bastard who reached too high, who believed he could rewrite the rules, died in the worst way possible. But let's flick the script. Let's talk about bastards who didn't just survive but got legitimized and built dynasties that lasted centuries. The Beaufort family. You want a complicated family tree. This is it. John of Gaunt, Duke of Lancaster, one of the richest and most powerful men in England, has this long affair with Catherine Swynford. They have 4 kids together, all bastards. All growing up knowing they're illegitimate and can never inherit anything real. They're stuck in this weird limbo, noble but not noble enough. But then John's wives die, and he actually marries Catherine. For real, and he legitimizes all 4 bastard children. Boom, just like that. They go from nobodies to somebodies. Henry Beaufort becomes a cardinal, one of the most powerful religious figures in England. He's advising kings, controlling church policy, amassing wealth that rivals royalty. Joan Beaufort marries into Scottish royalty and becomes the grandmother of a king. John Beaufort becomes an earl, and his bloodline. That bloodline eventually puts Henry VII on the throne and starts the entire Tudor dynasty. You know who the Tudors are, right? Henry VIII, Elizabeth I. All of that royal drama and power traces back to legitimized bastards. The Beauforts were born wrong, made right by a pen stroke, and ended up changing English history forever. Thomas Beaufort, another one of those legitimized kids, becomes Duke of Exeter and a military commander. He's fighting in France, winning battles, serving kings. These bastards didn't just get legitimized and sit quietly. They grabbed power with both hands and refused to let go. Now let's go back further, way back, to the civil war between Stephen and Matilda in 12th century England. It's called the Anarchy for a reason. Stephen's the king, but barely. His reign's a disaster. Constant wars, castles getting torched, people starving. The country's literally tearing itself apart. Who's fighting him the hardest? Robert of Gloucester, Matilda's half-brother, King Henry I's bastard son. Robert could have stayed quiet, lived a comfortable life with his lands and titles. Instead, he becomes Matilda's champion. He fights Stephen for years, winning battles, taking territory, nearly putting his half-sister on the throne. He's more loyal, more strategic, more dedicated than half the legitimate nobles who switch sides every other week. And when Matilda finally gives up and leaves England, Robert stays behind, negotiating the peace that eventually puts Matilda's son on the throne. The bastard didn't become king himself, but he made kings. His loyalty, his brilliance, his refusal to accept that being illegitimate meant being lesser changed the course of English succession. Let me tell you about Edmund Tudor now. This one's sneaky, complicated. The kind of story where legitimacy's so blurry you can't even tell what's real anymore. Edmund's mother is Catherine of Valois, a French princess who married King Henry V of England. Henry dies young, and Catherine's a widow living in England. She secretly marries this Welsh dude, Owen Tudor. Maybe, nobody's totally sure they were actually married. There's no solid proof. So when Edmund's born, is he legitimate? Is he not? Nobody knows. It's a giant question mark. But he grows up with royal connections, gets titles, and marries Margaret Beaufort, one of those legitimized bastard descendants we talked about earlier. Their son, Henry VII, the guy who ends the Wars of the Roses and starts the Tudor dynasty. So, England's most famous royal family, the dynasty that gave us Henry VIII and Elizabeth I, comes from a dude whose legitimacy was always questionable, married to a woman from a legitimized bastard line. The whole thing's built on shaky ground, but it doesn't matter. They took power and held it for over 100 years. Speaking of shaky legitimacy, let's talk about Henry Fitzroy, King Henry VIII's acknowledged bastard son. Henry VIII's going crazy, trying to get a legitimate male heir. His wife Catherine of Aragon can't give him one, just a daughter, but his mistress Bessie Blount. She gives him a healthy baby boy. Henry's so thrilled he does something wild. He publicly acknowledges the kid, names him Henry Fitzroy, which literally means son of the king. Gives him titles: Duke of Richmond, Duke of Somerset. This 6-year-old bastard's getting honours that grown men would kill for. Henry VIII's seriously considering making Fitzroy his heir. There's talk of legitimizing him. Forget the rules. Forget what the church says. This is his son, strong and healthy, and that's what matters. But then Fitzroy dies at 17. Just dies. Probably tuberculosis. And Henry's left with no male heir again, which is why he goes through all those wives, all those divorces, all those executions, all that chaos. If Fitzroy had lived, English history would be completely different. Anne Boleyn might never have been queen. Elizabeth I might never have been born. The bastard almost became king, and his death changed everything. Catherine Carey's story is quieter, but just as fascinating. She's probably Anne Boleyn's daughter from when Anne was having an affair with Henry VIII before they got married. What? Nobody says it out loud, but everybody knows. The timeline matches. The resemblance is there. Catherine grows up in Elizabeth I's court, her possible half-sister, and becomes one of the most powerful women in England. She never claims royal blood, never makes a fuss, but she's there in the background, influencing decisions, protecting Elizabeth, wielding soft power in ways that loud, obvious bastards never could. Then there's Geoffrey Plantagenet, an illegitimate son of King Henry II. Henry makes him Archbishop of York. Not bad for a bastard, right? One of the highest religious positions in England. But Geoffrey's ambitious, ruthless. He uses his church position to meddle in politics, challenge his legitimate brothers, cause chaos at every turn. He's constantly stirring up trouble, making alliances, breaking them. He never becomes king, but he makes kings sweat. That's power too. Sibylla of Normandy, illegitimate daughter of another Norman duke, marries into power and becomes a major political player. Nobody cares she's a bastard because she's smart, connected, and knows how to play the game. She brokers peace deals, arranges marriages, keeps kingdoms stable. Are illegitimate by birth, but legitimate in influence. Matilda of Flanders' descendants carry bastard blood, but nobody talks about it because they're too powerful to question. That's the secret, really. If you're powerful enough, legitimacy stops mattering. The rules only apply to people too weak to break them. Here's what all these stories teach us. Birth doesn't determine destiny. The throne doesn't belong to whoever's born first or born right. It belongs to whoever's strong enough, smart enough, ruthless enough to take it and hold it. These bastards didn't wait for permission, didn't apologise for existing. They looked at a world that called them mistakes and said, "Watch me prove you wrong." William conquered a kingdom. John saved a nation. Don Juan became a legend. The Beauforts built dynasties. Edmund's questionable legitimacy didn't stop his son from founding the Tudors. Robert of Gloucester made kings. Henry Fitzroy almost rewrote the rules entirely. These weren't accidents of history. The high had bear of history, and oft these were people who refused to accept the limitations the world put on them. And here's the darkest truth, the one that's going to stick with you long after this story ends. Most of the legitimate heirs, the ones born with every advantage, the ones everyone expected to succeed, they're forgotten, erased, footnotes in history books, but the bastards, we remember them. We tell their stories. We're fascinated by them because they represent something primal and true, the idea that you can overcome anything, that where you start doesn't determine where you finish, that the labels people put on you are only as powerful as you let them be. These bastards were born wrong but crowned right because they understood something fundamental about power. It's not given, it's taken. It's not about blood, it's about will. And when you combine ambition with desperation, when you give someone nothing to lose and everything to prove, you create something dangerous, something unstoppable. Something unstoppable. So next time someone tells you about royal bloodlines and legitimate succession and the proper order of things, remember these stories. Remember that the greatest empire builder England ever saw was called William the Bastard. Remember that Portugal's golden age was started by an illegitimate son. Remember that the Tudor dynasty, with all its drama and glory, came from questionable legitimacy mixed with bastard blood. The world's full of people who'll tell you that you can't succeed because you weren't born right. Because you don't have the right connections, or the right background, or the right circumstances. These bastards prove that's garbage. They took kingdoms, changed history, built legacies that lasted centuries. And they did it while everyone was calling them illegitimate, unworthy, impossible. That's the real lesson here. Not that being a bastard's an advantage. It's not. It's brutal and unfair and full of pain. But it's also fuel. It's motivation. It's the fire that turns some people into conquerors. Because when you're born with nothing, when every door's closed and every voice says you don't belong, you've got two choices. Accept it or burn it all down and build something new from the ashes. These bastards chose fire. And the world's still feeling the heat.